Good evening. I am making the video that I said I would in Monday's email to you, as opposed to the staff meeting that we would have had today at 3 o'clock. Because as you all know, today I was not supposed to be at school. I was supposed to be in Findlay at the PBL conference. And on Thursday, I was supposed to be down in Columbus at the Ohio Education and Technology Conference. However, one of my twinners, little Miss Bella, contacted the influenza B, which is not nearly as bad as the influenza A, so I'm not complaining. However, due to that, I've spent the last day and a half at home with her. So it just makes more sense to make this video, to share it with you. Just please make sure that you watch it before we come back to school on Tuesday. So the first thing I have here is I have 4 I can statements that I want to get through. And the first one is, I can list 3 observations from the OVEA survey results that will curb bullying and positively impact the school culture. Below that I can statement in the agenda that is shared with you is the link to it. When you click on this link, put the username and password, you'll come to this site. When you get to this site, what you'll do is you'll click on graphs there or reports. Of course, you want to do it for the high school. The report is obviously the report with words and all. The graphs is just the graphs, all the data that comes along with it. I spend most of my time looking at the graphs. So what I like you to do, though, is click on that graph and then go through all of the graphs. There's 35 graphs. I would show them to you with this PowerPoint slide down here, but it turns out that I cannot change from my current screen and tabs to the PowerPoint slide while I'm screen sharing. I tried it once. It didn't work, and so I've had to remake this video for the 3rd time now. So please click on the graphs and take a look at the data. Again, there's 35 slides, and what I need you to do is come up with 3 insights from those graphs. 3 different insights that you can take away in areas where you can kind of help curb bullying and kind of make our school environment a little bit better. I don't think the bullying is absolutely terrible at Buckeye Central. It's still higher than I would like. I think it's higher than we would all like. But it's not terrible. I have seen worse, and compared to the national average, and you'll see this in the graphs, we are definitely better. But we can certainly marginalize some of the bullying issues that we have. And if we can, well, then we should. So please take a look at those 35 different slides. Take a look at those graphs and be able to come up with 3 different insights. When we have our next staff meeting in March, that will be a topic of conversation for us. Now, the second I can statement, I can engage students throughout the whole lesson and keep students actively learning until the bell rings. I have that in here for just 1 or 2 reasons. Number one, when we've come back from school in January, mid-January to now, the last 2 to 2.5 weeks, I've noticed that we have more and more kids kind of hanging out in the hallways towards the end of class. The bell is not rung yet. There's 2 or 3 minutes until the bell rings, and the kids are kind of loitering at the door and into the hall. And then the second reason, in one case this past week, there was an elementary kid in our hallway. Some high school students got the hold of the young man, was playing with him, put him on the ground, pinned him down, and put their foot on top of him. Now, they weren't harming him. They weren't trying to hurt him. He's a very nice young man. Actually, it's a kid that our high school kids know well. But the point I'm making is, when the kids are standing at the door and they're kind of out in the hall, as a teacher, you don't know what's happening out there. So please keep all students in the classroom. Try to teach bell to bell. I realize that does not happen every day. I'm a realist. But try to teach bell to bell. If you fall short, keep them in their seats, keep them occupied. We do not want them loitering and getting into the hallway. Number 3, I can explain the graduation plan for each student, the policy that was set forth by the Ohio Department of Education, and list 1 action that I can do to help meet that policy. We've spoken about this policy a couple times now at staff meetings. ODE has finally placed some guidance on the policy in January. I think it was January 20th it came out. Very helpful for them to get the policy to us January 20th of this year, when it started with the freshmen back in August of this year. But the policy is now here. So I wanted to share this with you because I think there's some important information in here that you need to know. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's 3 pages. But there is a plan, and what they want to do beginning in 9th grade, again, this year's freshmen, continuing through the year they graduate, every student is required to develop and maintain a graduation plan. Actually, we're required to develop and maintain that with the student. The plan must be developed by the student, a rep of the school, has to be updated each school year, and we have to invite the student's parents, the guardians, or custodians in the process of creating this plan. So there's a lot to it. There's A, B, C, D, E, and F on this first page. I'm not going to read all of it to you, but I do want to point out 1 or 2 parts that might be pretty important to you. Let's go down to D. I'll highlight this for you. This plan must be used as both a criterion and a procedure for identifying at-risk students in the district or the school. We also have to identify students at risk of not graduating. We've been doing this for a couple of years already, so we're kind of ahead of the ball game. We call this our student success plan. Whenever we believe there's a student that's at risk of not graduating, we ask staff members to initiate a student success plan. We had this conversation back in December. Again, we're kind of ahead of the ball game on this because it's just good for kids. But now the state of Ohio has actually created a policy mandating that it's law. So I wanted to point that out to you. So we're asking you guys to do this for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's just good for kids. But number 2, it's also policy and state law. So the tricky part is trying to decipher whether a student is at risk of not graduating or not. So if you have a child in your class who's failing your class, look at that child's other grades. If there's multiple Fs, then that child is at risk. If you have a child who's missing your class all the time, that child might be skipping other classes too. Ask myself, ask Mrs. Close, ask Mrs. Faith, what's their attendance in other classes? Because they're skipping a lot of other classes, that child's probably at risk. If there's a child who is absent all the time, and we do have a few of those children are probably, could be considered at risk. What you want to do is take the one signal that you get, the one signal that you see, and look to see if there's more signals, if there's more red flags. And if we have 2, 3 red flags, then that child probably is at risk. Once you determine or decipher that a child might be at risk, we ask that you go into the student information system. It's a part of Progress Book, and initiate the student success plan. Once that is initiated, let Mrs. Close and myself know, and then we'll take it from there. But we believe that being the teachers, being in the trenches with the students, being on the front line with the students, that you're going to see some things before we do. And if you do, we'd love for you to go ahead and to initiate that plan first. If I scroll down, you'll notice there's a whole policy just for those kids who are at risk. There's like 5 things you have to do. And again, most of these things we already do. It's something that we started 2 to 2.5 years ago. So again, we're kind of ahead of the curve on this one, but it's now policy. You know, you're supposed to have a process or a criteria to identify the at-risk students. We already have that. Procedures, we already have that. A notification process of getting parents involved, we already do that. That's all part of our student success plan. So that's all fine and dandy. But again, I just need our staff members to initiate that student success plan if you believe a student is at risk. And if you initiate it and the student's not at risk, that's okay. No big deal. We will not go through with it. I would rather us do that than not initiate a plan for a student who really didn't need it. If you go down to number 5 here, one of the things that the state suggests that schools do for students who are at risk is to start a mentoring program. Well, we did that 3 years ago. That's something that Mrs. Close has started at least 3 years ago. Who knows? It could be more than that by now. So again, I think we're kind of ahead of the ball game on this because we do kind of take students that we think are failing, who potentially could be at risk, and we do pass those students out to teachers, and we ask you to be mentors for them. We've always done that because it's just good for kids. Now we want to do it also because it's also a part of state policy. It's also a part of state law now. So whenever you have those mentoring programs, whenever we give you a child and we ask you to mentor them, please, please, please check on that student at least once a week. I know a lot of you guys do this already more than once a week, but please try to do it at least once a week. I know we're super busy. Trust me, I'm just as busy, and I'm mentoring Davy Williams. But it's just good for kids. And it's something I think is going to take all of us as a whole staff, as a whole team. If we want to tackle this, get ahead of the curve and do some really good things for kids, it's going to take all of us working together. So there it is, mentoring programs, student success plans, initiating those at-risk students. It's all part of Ohio's graduation plan now. The good news is we've been doing this for a while. We just need to keep it up. And in some cases, maybe do it a little bit sooner and maybe a little bit more actively looking for those students. Number 4, I can explain the 3 Buckeye Central local graduation seals. Again, this is something that I showed you back, I think in November, again in December, and I have shared with you. One of the pathways to graduation is for students to obtain 2 graduation seals. They have to do this. There's 2 types of graduation seals. There's a state-created graduation seal, and there's a local created graduation seal. A student must have 2 seals, and one of those 2 must be a state-created graduation seal, and the other one may be a local created graduation seal. So we worked on those, and I shared those with you. I'm going to bring those back up one more time. We have the community service seal that we have created. We have the fine and performing arts seal, and we have the student engagement seal. Over here is what we believe a student needs to meet to earn that seal. We worked pretty diligently at ensuring it was rigorous. Kids had to earn it, but it wasn't so rigorous that a kid couldn't earn it, especially those kids who would be in risk of not graduating. So we try to find that balance. So I ask you one more time to take a look at these, because in about a week to a week and a half, I'm going to give this to Mr. Robinson because it has to be board approved. Excuse me. It has to be board approved. He's going to want a week or so or 2 weeks to look at it and ask me questions. And then we'll have to have it board approved after that. So one more time, if you have not looked at it because you forgot about it, it's kind of hidden somewhere in the drive, you can't find it, please look at it because I am looking for all kinds of input that I can get on this. I can't make the perfect policy, I know that. So I am taking everybody's suggestions and ideas and thoughts, and I'm giving them all serious consideration when we write this. So if you have not done so, please look at it. If you think it's good, great, tell me why it's good. If there's some concerns, you think there's some things I should change, please let me know. Excuse me. Again, we've got about another week to week and a half until I give this to Mr. Robinson. And there you go. That is all 4 of my bullet points. Now you do notice that I used I can statements. I did that for a reason. Part of our OIP process is I can statements, student-friendly targets, whatever you want to call them. And for most of this year and last year as well, we did a really good job of having those posted. But for the last month or so, not so much. Excuse me, I apologize. So if you have not been posting those, please resurrect that idea and pull that and pull those out and put those back on the board. It's just good for kids. One of the things I did want to show you quickly is this page. I'm a huge fan of John Hattie. He's written a number of books. I'm not going to call him revolutionary, but I am going to call him pretty gosh darn important. His books are really good. He's put together a great package, a great view of understanding what really good teaching is. And it's easy, and it's accessible, it's understandable, and I'll be quite frank with you, I think it's pretty accurate. And one of the things he says that is really important is teacher clarity. And a part of teacher clarity is having learning intentions, success criteria, and learning progressions. I will not get into all of that right now, but learning intentions is just what we call I can statements. It's what we call student-friendly targets. They're really important. They're good for kids. It's best for kids if they know what you're expecting from them, if they know what they're supposed to do today, if they have a model for what success looks like. that really helps them learn. It's a powerful tool. It's really easy. It's only powerful if you use it. If you write it on the board and you never talk about it, it doesn't do anything. But if you write it on the board and you talk about it and you refer to it and you use it, it's good teaching. John Hattie and all his research showed that it has an effect size of 0.75. If you don't know what an effect size is, don't worry. Most of America doesn't. It's just a statistical analysis to determine how impactful a certain intervention was on student learning. And what Hattie found was the average positive effect size was 0.4. So your average positive intervention on learning has an effect size of 0.4. Teacher clarity, learning intentions, I can statements, student-friendly targets, whatever you want to call them, has an effect size of 0.75. That's almost double the average positive intervention. Almost double. It is a powerful, powerful learning intervention if used properly. And it's really easy to do. You don't need to do it every day. If you're teaching something new, you want to use it. They can be cumbersome to write, I know. So if you haven't been using them, if they kind of fell by the wayside, please resurrect those and pull those back out. If you have been using them, thank you, keep it up. And remember, they only work if you talk about them. You just can't write them on the board. They only work if you talk about them. And that's it. If you have any questions, as always, shoot me an email or stop down and say hi.